we're joined with Shobhan Saxena. How you doing, Shobhan? You doing okay today?
Hi, Jamal. I'm fine. Thank you. How are you doing?
I am doing well. By the way, what is the temperature in Brazil?
Temperature right now is about 20 degrees centigrades. I don't know how to convert into Fahrenheit.
I
Having
don't
lived in New
know.
York, it's a shame. I can't do it.
Let me see, 20 degrees in Fahrenheit. I'm just curious. 6 to 8 degrees. Okay. So it's a nice day, basically. It's
Oh,
not a horrible day.
pleasant.
Uh,
No,
and
it's
it's morning
pleasant
there.
considering it's summertime. This morning,
Yeah.
summertime, but 20 degrees, very pleasant. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's what, 10 o'clock there. It's about 10:30 there. So it's 6 to 8 degrees at
Yeah.
10:30. So you're probably going to get up to 75 degrees today, if not higher. I miss those temperatures, man. I miss those temperatures. Shobhan Saxena, just to give the audience a heads up, he is an Indian journalist based out of Sao Paulo, Brazil. I'm sorry, he's an Indian journalist based out of Sao Paulo, Brazil since 2012. As a foreign correspondent, he has reported for the Times of India, the Times Express, The Wire, DD India News Channel. Currently, he is a contributor for The Hindu, one of the biggest newspapers in India. His work focuses on Brazilian politics, the economy, and culture, and India-Brazil relationships or relations. He has done considerable reporting and writing on the BRICS group also. And that's what brings you here today. India is taking over the gavel from Brazil. Special day, or at the very least, they took it over on Friday. I believe it was last Friday. They took over the gavel from Brazil. Um, what does it mean? Is this ceremonial? Is there more to it than it just being ceremonial? What is the significance of them taking it over from Brazil?
Yeah. So, what really happened in Brasilia, the capital of Brazil, on December 11th and 12th? There was a meeting of BRICS Sherpas, the diplomats who lead the initiative on BRICS of 11 countries, not just five founding members, but 11 full members now, including Iran and Ethiopia and other new members. And it was basically a stock taking exercise, looking at what happened during the year 2025 under the leadership of Brazil, and then the gavel was handed over to India's Sherpa, Mr. Sudhakar Dallela, who is a very senior diplomat, which means that India will commence its presidency um, from January 1, 2026. And Brazil's presidency actually officially comes to end on 31st December of 2025. So, it's a rotating presidency of BRICS countries, one after another. Especially the presidency still stays with the founding members at Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, and maybe we'll see maybe in the future the other countries may also get it. So basically, this year, 2025, the BRICS summit was held in Brazil in Rio de Janeiro. Brazil organized more than 200 meetings, online and physical meetings on various issues, on various agendas of BRICS. A lot of visits happen from India, from China, from Russia. And so I think now the gavel has been passed into India, which means now India will hold all these meetings in New Delhi or other cities on the various agendas of BRICS, that is finance, health, artificial intelligence, sustainable development. So basically, that is what's going to happen next year. That means that is the process of when you pass the gavel from one country to another, which means the presidency has been handed over to India. It's now India's duty to conduct the presidency of BRICS in the coming year, which is going to be a very, very important year.
What is going to be so? Just so I'm getting this right, does the person who's the president's, let's say, or the country that's president of BRICS, do they get dictate the direction of BRICS, or let's say the focus of BRICS? Does that make sense, or is it's still kind of all of them together, and this is more of a ceremonial role? And if that's not the case, meaning if it is where India gets to dictate what the main focus will be of the organization, what is India's main focus going to be?
See, I don't think the country which holds presidency actually dictate, because BRICS is basically a collective, you know,
Right,
and so yeah, the 2025, the theme in Brazil was sustainable and inclusive development. So
right.
that is basically the catchphrase, which means the discussion revolves around this theme, sustainable development. And also, Jamal, it's important to know that the Brazil also hosted the COP30 meeting summit
Yes.
this year in Belém. Yeah, so there was a basic, also there was a connection, and the last year they hosted the G20 meeting. So there's three big meetings, global summits happen in Brazil, one after another. Very important from Brazilian perspective. So that was the sustainable development, inclusive growth. So I think India is also going to come up with a theme for its presidency next year. They already have talked about the four pillars of innovation and resilience and things like that. But I think once the India actually starts holding meetings in the coming year, we'll have more clarity about what is the theme. But as I wrote an article about it in the Hindu, and you must have seen it, and the focus of that article was how about continuity, how India is going to continue the what happened in Brazil in 2025. Yeah. So Brazil passes the gavel to India amid global tensions and ambitious goals. So the theme of the article is basically continuity. As I said before, the BRICS is a collective. We have these meetings every year, the BRICS summit, and a lot of meetings happen on every possible subject, from healthcare to artificial intelligence, climate change, poverty, and how to reform the global financial system, how to reform the global governance model, everything. So I think that discussion will continue. But I think this year was very important because what happened in Brazil was really unprecedented. The Brazilian declaration, the Rio declaration, was unprecedented. I think the BRICS countries took a very strong position on three fundamental issues.
Mhm.
One is declaration on the issue of artificial intelligence, which is going to be a challenge, especially for emerging countries and the developing world, not just next year, in the coming years. The second was the climate action plan. So, as I said, Brazil hosted the COP30 meeting. Even before that meeting happened, I think the BRICS countries had an agreement on a collective position on the climate action plan. Very
Yeah.
important development. And the third declaration was on the socially transmitted diseases, which is, it's not a problem with the developed countries. This is a problem which exists in Asia and Africa and Latin America. Like healthcare issues, very important. And I think what we'll see in India after these three declarations, and also there was a lot to talk about reforms of the United Nations Security Council. UN is practically, in my opinion, is dead. There's so many conflicts and wars happening around the world, but UN is not able to do anything because of the basic reason it doesn't reflect the realities of the global order right now. The global order is not dominated by the European powers or US anymore. I mean, they're we are seeing actually multipolarity in action, really, and UNSC doesn't reflect that. So I think there was a lot of talk about reforms in UNSC and focus on multilateralism. As I wrote in my article, the biggest threat to multilateralism is the policies of the Trump administration and also European countries. They have lost interest in multilateralism. They keep talking about among themselves. So I think what the BRICS countries are trying to do, and we'll see that in India, restoration and more emphasis on multilateralism, reform of global institutions, including financial institutions, more emphasis on the National Development Bank, which is based in Shanghai, led by former Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff, and all three important declarations made in Rio. Will see the continuity how under India's presidency they will be taken forward, and there'll be more discussion, more action on these declarations.
More action how? Like, what do you say to people who make the argument that BRICS seems like more of a talking shop currently? That granted, it takes organization time to grow, but currently there's a lot of talking, but they don't see much action, especially on big ticket issues. For example, or issues of war, as you point out, the UN Security Council. I'm sure they would talk about it, but it's not necessarily anything will be done about it. I'm not even sure what BRICS would do about it per se. But what do you make of people who make this argument? Are they just not paying attention to what BRICS is actually doing in real terms?
Yeah, I think this has been a very old accusation against BRICS is a talk shop. The leaders meet and they just talk and pass some resolutions, declarations, which means nothing. And I think Brazilian Foreign Minister Mauro Vieira, he said something very interesting at this meeting in Brasilia last week. He said people want to see results and how the people's lives are affected by what decisions are taken
Yes.
at the BRICS meeting. And I think from that point of view, three important declarations on artificial intelligence, on diseases, and on climate action are very, very important, very, very important decisions because these are the three most important issues uh, the world is facing today. Climate action, for example, the developed world has they have turned their back on it. At COP30, we saw Trump boycotted it. Europeans were there half-heartedly participating but not promising any money. So they're actually rolling back their position. So who's now taking the burden? It's on the BRICS countries, basically Brazil. China is going to play a very important role, and China is showing to the world how the with research and development and the introduction of green energy, China today is the leader in green energy. India is going to make very fundamental contributions. So these are very concrete issues, but these
Mhm.
concrete issues do not interest the Americans or Europeans anymore. So they say, "Oh, it's a talk shop." It's not a talk shop. When you take a decision on artificial intelligence, how should it govern? I mean, right now, California, it's a wild west. People are fighting over, investments, and everyone is making huge claims about artificial intelligence, Chat GPT and Gemini and all these models
Yeah.
coming up. We don't know what they're going to do. These tech billionaires have completely gone crazy. On the other hand, we are seeing a different model coming from China, open source artificial intelligence. India is going to work in that direction. So I think anyone who says it's just a talk shop is not paying attention, and they have not been paying attention, or they till now, before Donald Trump came on the scene, Americans have either ignored or they have mocked BRICS. Oh, it's a talk shop. They just meet and talk, and there are too many differences within the group. It's not going to succeed. But when such concrete decisions are taken and governments are going to apply those decisions in their policies, I think we're going to see very big results.
I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that the biggest issue that's going to confront BRICS going forward is I could put all of this under one umbrella. It's not just artificial intelligence. It's not just climate change. It's not just development. It is going to be Donald Trump and the U.S. more broadly. And the reason I say that is Trump comes in office and effectively tries to flex all of the powers that he believes the U.S. has at its disposal. So they go after Russia, or they continue to go after Russia. They go after China. They go after the world in regards to tariffs. They go after India directly, believing India is somehow a weak link, which is why they're effectively trying to bully Modi. They go after Venezuela with the idea of trying to overthrow the Venezuelan government and murdering fishermen in the Caribbean. It single-handedly backs Israel, not to mention with the help of the European countries, but effectively backs them and gives them political support and cover for a genocide that they've effectively committed. Meaning you get a rogue actor in this, and this rogue actor just so happens to have $1 trillion military budget with an ungodly number of nuclear weapons, either the number one or number two amount around the globe. This seems to be one of the main issues. Venezuela could have been a member of BRICS. If Brazil voted a different way, Venezuela would have been a member of BRICS that is now effectively being bullied and potentially overthrown, in part because of the oil, but in also part because of its relationship with Russia, China, and Iran. How is BRICS looking at this, what seems to be an intractable problem?
See, what we're witnessing now in the world for a few years is the end of the unipolar dominance and emergence of a multipolar world.
Mhm.
It's not an event; it's a process. And the process that takes time. And I think it's also important. You mentioned Trump, and I think it's important to talk about the National Security Strategy document, which
Yes.
came out recently. And they're talking about a Doctrine being applied to Latin America, and Europe has less importance there. And talking about China, other things. So I think in a way there's an acceptance by Americans that the multipolar world is inevitable. They can't stop it, but how they're reacting to it, that is important. I think they want to split the world into two different spheres of dominance. One can be dominated the, by the Eastern powers like China mostly, or India and other countries, and they say, "Oh, we want to dominate the Western Hemisphere." This strategy is very flawed for the simple reason: from Mexico to Argentina today, China is the biggest trading partner of all the countries. This is not 18th century. This is not 19th century. You want to keep the Spanish out. Okay, the Spanish were colonizers that colonized the largest part of, except Brazil, that colonized the largest part of South America and Latin America, from Mexico to Argentina. The situation has changed completely. So I think, as I say, careful what you wish for. Donald Trump is talking about a different strategy, but I think they're accepting that they can't dominate the world anymore. And very important, Jamal, there's a kind of a break in the transatlantic relationship. Europe
Mhm.
is not that important for US anymore. They see Europe as a rival. Europe is not important because if US and Russia can have normal relations, Europe has no relevance. And that's what Europeans are trying to do. They want to prolong this war in Ukraine. Not the Americans anymore. It's the Europeans who want to prolong the war. They every day keep talking about sending army to Ukraine, or stealing the Russian assets, because they want this. Because the American support, they feel like orphans. Europeans actually,
Right.
without the American security umbrella. When I remember when Donald Trump got elected first time in 2016, they were all crying. Oh, this is going to end. The NATO is going to come to an end, and the Americans are going to turn against us and all that nonsense. So, to put the to put it succinctly, basically, what we are seeing is an emergence of a new world order, which will take time. It's not going to happen in 2 years, in 3 years, in 4 years, or 5 years. Maybe it will take 5 to 10 years. A truly multipolar world is emerging. It will emerge slowly, steadily, but it is emerging, and Americans have realized it. Europeans are living in the like
Delusion.
ostrich. They have the heads buried in the sand. They're not seeing the reality, and they're into a lot of trouble, in every possible way, socially, economically, politically. Europe is in big trouble, and this war against Russia, using Ukraine as an excuse, is, I think, is their way of destabilize this new world order which is emerging. But I think it's inevitable. We'll see more activity in India next year, and then the BRICS summit is going to happen in China in 2027. So, moving from Brazil to India and China, these are big powers now. You can't ignore it. Of course, the economy of Brazil and India may not be as big as China's or as big as European Union's, but these countries are powerful players in the global affairs anymore. Now, and to ignore, you can ignore them at your own peril.
I don't think. Yes, retrenchment is part of it. So agreed. I do get that part of the national security strategy is retrenchment. But if you look at the strategy, I mean, it makes it clear that effectively wants to use secondary actors to go after America's enemies, with America being behind the scenes, effectively influencing, manipulating those actors in a sense. And while it retrenches, and I suppose build more ships in order to be able to contest with China at some point. But if you've noticed, Donald Trump has made it more than any other president a specific focus on BRICS. Like, I don't remember Obama ever mentioning BRICS. I don't remember Joe Biden ever mentioning BRICS directly. I do remember Trump bringing up, oh, they're trying to go after the dollar. And I don't think it's a coincidence that part of the reason he's going after many of the countries, Brazil, India, China, etc., I don't think that's a coincidence at all. the ones that he's going after the harshest, are also just so happen to be a member of BRICS. And if we're thinking about this Monroe Doctrine strategy, okay, well, Brazil, who's a primary member of BRICS, at one point Argentina was a member of BRICS, but obviously that's gone belly up since Milei's come into office. But China has one of the largest ports that are in South America, in Peru. How does that work? Like, how does it work that the US president is effectively asserting dominance over sovereign states that have close and tight relationships to China, India, Russia, etc.? What, like, meaning that seems to be a serious issue that the next BRICS administration is going to have to effectively deal with directly. Or you could say individually that the individual constituents of BRICS are going to have to deal with directly. And I don't know how it does that. I mean, it doesn't have a military. I guess it could use diplomatic might, but I don't know what that looks like.
Yeah, and I think, Jamal, we have to remember what happened during the Cold War. A lot of conflicts in Asia, from Korea and Vietnam and Cambodia, Laos, and military dictatorships in entire South America, Brazil,
Mhm.
Argentina, Chile, all backed by the U.S. What was it? The fear of communism, or it was not a fear actually, because all these countries had strong leftist parties. Also in Europe, I mean, they were scared of about the European countries coming under the influence of Soviet Union or communist parties coming to
Right.
power. Yeah, even India-Pakistan rivalry, it became very hot during the Cold War because the Western countries, they always backed Pakistan, not India, and they talk about India being the biggest democracy in the world and the US being the oldest democracy. But during the Cold War, they were supporting Pakistan, which was under military dictatorship. So,
Mhm.
that was a result of Cold War, basically, conflicts all over the world. So, as we're talking about Cold War 2.0, which is a Cold War between US and China, and to an extent Russia, and by extension with BRICS countries, so we are going to see these disturbances. I think this pressure tax, muscle flexing in the Caribbean, this plan to attack. I don't think they're going to attack Venezuela actually, but they are muscle flexing, they're threatening, they're posturing, they're showing to the world that we are still the boss in this region. You may have very big trade relations with them, but we are the military power. I mean, and that is a challenge in front of the BRICS because BRICS is not a military alliance. It's not even a political alliance. It's a
Right.
collective
It's
about
economic.
the new world order, how to reform it, how to make it better, how to make it in more in favor of the developing countries. That is objective. But I think an attempt is being made to derail that process. And I think yesterday Trump approved $10 billion to Taiwan. You know, so that because they know that Taiwan is some kind of bait they can use against China, like
Right.
Ukraine is being used against Russia. That's what was the whole Russian strategy was to destabilize Russia. They were hoping that the Russian government will collapse. There'll be some kind of regime change in Russia, and Russia is the richest, one of the richest, if not the richest country in terms of natural resources, including petroleum and gas. Rare earth, you name it. They have everything, and they sit on the Eurasian landmass. That is basically the Eurasian landmass. So if you kind of have Russia in your hand, you control both Asia and Europe and the entire world. So I think in the few years, I think we saw the bombing of Iran. Iran was bombed by Americans. Only the nuclear installations, not but they also use Israel to attack Iran. You have a lot of the military leaders were killed inside. So I think like the Cold War, we're going to see these disturbances. We're going to see these attempts to destabilize this country. A lot has happened. A lot has happened in India's neighborhood in the recent years. And if you speak to some Indian experts, the so-called Gen Z revolutions in Nepal and Bangladesh. And Bangladesh is burning again today. I saw
Yes, it
burning,
is. I saw it. Yeah,
they're
I saw it.
burning newspaper offices with journalists inside. You know, it's madness. It's insanity. Why are you burning newspaper offices or TV stations with journalists inside? Nobody knows what's going to happen in Bangladesh. So I think there's all around India, they're creating a ring of fire. Uh, Nepal, because that has impact on India and that has an impact on China as well. because China is very heavily invested in all these countries, including Pakistan. Pakistan, they have almost $65 billion in investment.
Yeah.
So I think, there's now that is the only game they are left with. Actually, that was the only game that they already had, saying, regime change operations, war, creating internal disturbances, because their focus never been on sustainable development or growth of people, enhancing their income. Nothing. That's what they are best at. You know, using the intelligence and military power to destabilize the country. So this game will go on. I think it will be a test of nerves, and this is an important challenge for BRICS also how they deal with it. I don't think the solution for BRICS is to make a military alliance. That's not a possibility. That's not going to happen. But they need to show more solidarity with countries like Venezuela. I think President Lula spoke yesterday about in a press conference, and he was very, very clear that they don't want a war in this part of the world, in this
Yeah.
continent. The Colombian president has been very vociferous too, very clearly saying we don't want a war against Venezuela. So the message is clear. And Celso Amorin, who's the advisor to President Lula, he said last week that if there's a war in Venezuela, is going to create many Vietnams. A reference clearly to what happened in Vietnam, the war had spread to Cambodia, Laos. It's a very, very dirty story, very bloody and dirty story. And nobody wants that story to be repeated in this part of the world. So I think this is going to be a challenge which BRICS countries have to keep in mind, because the game is very clear now, what they're up to, what they can do. Everyone knows, everyone has seen, and it's important to discuss these issues and take a collective position on these issues.
Yeah, I agree with you. It will be a war on nerves. I think your main point, though, is that for all intents and purposes, this is the last gasp of a failing empire who seems to be flexing his muscles at the last minute to try to make it seem, let's say, stronger than what it actually is in practice.
Yeah,
And
like a cowboy, they want to go down all guns blazing. See.
yeah, yeah. I think I described it as a 60-year-old trying to hit on the 20-year-old at the bar. It's like, I used to be a football jock in high school. It's like, dude, you're in your 60s. What are you doing right now? That's the boy. I mean, I'm sorry. Shobhan, thank you for this, man. I always appreciate these breakdowns. You are fantastic at what you do, and your articles are awesome. I will put your article at the bottom of the video after I cut it, either tonight or tomorrow. Shobhan Saxena, he's an Indian journalist based out of Sao Paulo, Brazil, since 2012. As a foreign correspondent, he has reported from Times of India, the Indian Express, The Wire, DD India News Channel. Currently, he's a contributor to The Hindu, one of the biggest newspapers in India. His work is focused on Brazilian politics, economy, and culture, and India-Brazil relations, and has done considerable reporting on, as we mentioned today, BRICS. You have a great rest of your day, man. Thank you for this.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.